Hi, everybody. Um, Chelsea here. We are experiencing some technical difficulties. If only we were as good at technology as we are with climbing, things might go smoothly from here on out. So thank you for hanging in there. Hopefully things are smooth from here on out. I'm just going to reintroduce myself real quick. My name is Chelsea. I've been climbing for 22 years. Um, I was talking about how I got introduced to climbing, and I started in Atlanta, Georgia with my dad. The majority of my climbing career has been competition, although I don't do it anymore. Um, and let's see. Um, Competition was really wonderful, like I was saying, because it allowed me to travel across the country and across the world and really start to create community and find myself within this new sport that I was involved in. So I feel really fortunate to have done that. Competition now is so much different than it was back then. Now climbing is in the Olympics, although that did get moved to, I think, August 2021, which is probably a good thing. But yeah, just there are so many more climbers today than there were when I was climbing and competing. The training facilities are different. It's just a whole different world. And yeah. So eventually, I think I was 17 or something when I first started coaching climbing. And I did so actually to save the youth team that I had been a part of, because they were getting ready to dissolve it because they couldn't find a head coach. And that youth team really was family to me. And so I couldn't see it go under. So I stepped in and I was like, let me take it over. And that was kind of the first time that I really started giving back to this community that had already at the time given me so much, really taught me self-growth, self-reflection, mental strength, and like you just name it, climbing gave it to me. So as I started to phase out of competition life later on, I actually got on board with Adidas, and Adidas was probably my biggest sponsor, still is my biggest sponsor. They have just shown so much support for my climbing, and they really helped me in that transition from competition climber to more outdoor and community focused climber. So thank you, Adidas, and all of you that support Adidas, of course. Coaching has always been really special to me. However, I would say over the last 4 or 5 years, I've really been focusing a lot more on women specific events. And primarily because when I first started climbing, there weren't a lot of women in the industry. That has changed a lot, but I think that also depends on where you live. And there's something really special about when women come together and climb with each other, especially when there's space specifically carved out for that group of people to come together. So I found it to be really special and decided that that's kind of what I was going to do. And some of the women's clinics that I've taught actually have been at American Alpine Club Kraken Classic events. And those actually have been some of my favorite. And I don't really know why, probably because the festival of these, Kraken Classic events just bring together so much warm community. It just feels really good. So in addition to focusing on women's specific events, it was also my passion, not just to be a rock climber, but to work in medicine. So I was working at a women's health center in Boulder, Colorado for quite some time and really got the chance to learn more about inclusivity, transgendered rights, which actually today is National Transgender Day, which is really awesome. But anyway, I got to learn a lot about those communities and really decided that I just really want to include all of that within climbing. So kind of like intertwine all of my passions together. At the same time, going back to climbing, climbing is this really wonderful sport that really helps us grow individually and grow as a community as well. It helps us connect to the outdoors. If you're not an outdoor climber, that's okay, because there are so many climbing gyms in the world right now that, you know, you can find your own little community and still improve on yourself and your climbing and all of that, just by going to the climbing gym. Like, that's where I learned, and it's an amazing place. Um, so while climbing can be this really powerful thing, it can also be this thing that causes a lot of pain and turmoil. Um, Recently, within the last 2.5 years, I've lost, unfortunately, quite a few friends to climbing and or outdoor activities like backcountry skiing. And the American Alpine Club has done a really great job with this new nonprofit called the Climbing Grief Fund. They have workshops at these Kraken Classic events that I was just talking about. And I participated in one this last year in 2019. This is the Climbing Grief Fund helps people kind of deal with grief and loss that is inevitable, more or less, within the climbing community. And it really helped me kind of work through what I was carrying from losing my friend, Savannah Buick from Chicago. She was climbing at Devil's Lake and had an accident. And I mean, I remember getting the text message, you know, did you hear about Savannah? And I didn't at that point, because it had just recently happened and I just didn't think it was real. And trying to deal with that is, I can't even explain it, but the Climbing Grief Fund really, really helped with that, which was awesome. And it was actually partially because of them being able to help me that, fast forward a few months, I really landed on something that was really meaningful for me. So in honor of Savannah, and plus honoring my passion to bring women together, bring non-cisgendered women together as well, and just hold this space where women can come together and really just drop their any guards that they might have, not feel pressure to be anything but just themselves. I then created this new organization called She Sends Collective. And I'm just beside myself with it because, like I said, it really does intertwine all of my passions. It intertwines my love for teaching, bringing women together. And then it also honors Savannah because we are working on developing education around eating disorder, which unfortunately is very prevalent in the climbing community. It was probably recently, within the last year, that eating disorder has really been discussed openly amongst some people, but definitely in public, about this problem in climbing. And so before Savannah's accident, she had told me that it was her life goal to bring education to the climbing community around eating disorder, and then also help provide resources for those in need who are trying to recover. Savannah did suffer from eating disorder, and a few months before her accident, she was actually living out here in Colorado, and she had mentioned that she was just starting to turn the corner with that and really feeling like she was getting to know herself as a young adult. She was getting ready to graduate college, and she was just so passionate about helping people and just bringing them together and providing resources. She knew that the resources needed to go through recovery in an appropriate way isn't available to a lot of people. So She Sends Collective does help bring that piece of it together, which I'm really excited about. Like I said, it is kind of weird just talking to the screen. I know a lot of you are out there and I really appreciate it. I do want to touch again on, it is Women's History Month this month, March. And so I just want to really shout out to the women that have really inspired me. Obviously, Savannah being one of them. You know, Emily Harrington, she's someone that I grew up climbing, like competing with as a kid, and just seeing her evolve as a climber has been really inspiring to me. My dear friend Andrea CK, you know, she and I used to compete against each other back in the day, and now she's one of my dear friends. Lynn Hill, obviously, definitely paving the way for women well ahead of the curve. Margot Hayes, you kind of just name it. Jamie Logan, Nikki Smith, all of these beautiful women who I totally admire for various reasons. I think that's really about it. I am so happy to do a question and answer. So if you guys have any questions, send them my way, and I'm happy to answer them for you.
Great. Thanks so much, Chelsea, for sharing your story. And like she mentioned, if you all have a question for Chelsea, now's your chance. We're lucky to be in the Clubhouse Live, the first one ever with rockstar Chelsea Rude. So if you've got a question for her, just type it into the comment field below. But in the meantime, I'm Heidi. I'm the AAC's events director and here to be the question asker, if you will. And Chelsea, something that really resonated for me during your talk is a theme that was woven all throughout it, which is this idea of community. It's clearly something that matters to you and that you've been able to find in climbing. You've even gone as far as to dedicate your professional life to community with the creation of She Sends. So can you tell us a little bit about what you get out of building relationships and fostering community?
Yeah, that's a great question, Heidi. Community to me, that's a big question, really. Community helps my soul just feel fulfilled. It makes me happy. Like climbing obviously makes me happy and it makes me stoked, but honestly, like climbing wouldn't be the same without the community. You know, people are always there for you. They always bring different perspective on things. Yeah, like, and I think actually circling back around to this COVID pandemic, it's very interesting to sit here when we're supposed to be on these stay-at-home orders or quarantine, if you will. Because actually, like the last week or so, or at least the first week of this quarantine, I felt really isolated. You know, I miss the physical, you know, fist pump or hug or whatever that I get with my friends. And all of a sudden that's not happening. Now it's like you're doing a little foot kick if you see them, or like even just yelling across the street from one another. So yeah, I mean, community really makes it for me. And it's not just climbing, but community makes life for me. You know, like I am an introvert, but this whole pandemic thing has made me feel like maybe I'm more of an extrovert than I thought. You know, like I love my people. I love meeting new people. I love helping people. Like I think I was just put on this earth to like serve and bring people together. So it just like fills me up, you know.
Love that. Love that answer. That's so great. Community fills you up. So that's perfect. Leads right into our next question, which is, as you alluded to right now with COVID-19, we're all adjusting to new norms. The president just extended our stay-at-home orders through the end of April, which means that our most common methods as climbers and humans for gathering and connecting are off limits. Do you have any recommendations on how people can find community within this new world that we're all adjusting to?
Yeah. I mean, take this for example, right? Like we might not actually be able to physically give a little fist bump, but I've really, like, for me, making sure that I'm like carving out an hour or more to sit on the phone, even a video chat with my friends, like that is what's really making me feel better through all of this. I know that there are a lot of live events going on, live clinics even. I'm just going to give a shout out to Denver Mountain Guiding right now because I know that they're doing live clinics about multi-pitch climbing and anchor building. And I just think that we're all just having to kind of recreate what our norm is during this. A lot of people are giving live, workout sessions, or I even did this workshop where they were teaching you how to make bath bombs. Like it just keeps going. So I think, if you're not really that inclined for technology, now might be a good time to kind of like figure out what stations you like as far as like Instagram or Facebook or whatever platforms, not stations. Um, and then just kind of get involved with what people are offering. On the contrary, though, I think it is really good to not be on your phones and not be on the computer during all of this, and definitely for the whole time, obviously, and get outside and enjoy nature. Like my silver lining in all of this is definitely being able to slow down. I've been playing a lot in my garden, and like, oh, it's just brought me so much joy to see my sunflower seeds sprouting already. And I think it's those little things that I would not have maybe noticed, before, because I'd be off to work in the morning, come back in the evening, and whatever. So it's kind of nice to see the slower pace and get to notice things that I normally wouldn't notice.
Great. So from a member of our audience, Patrick G, he has a question for you. Are you still climbing and competing in the time of the coronavirus lockdown?
Good question. I actually don't compete at all anymore. I retired a couple of years ago, and as far as climbing goes, I'm not. I know a lot of people still are, but for me and where I stand in things, I just don't think it's a good idea. We don't yet know, how long this COVID-19 can actually live on surfaces. So if I happen to be an asymptomatic carrier and I go climbing, even if there is nobody there, but someone then follows up behind me, not very long after, like that is a way of transmission, or at least it is a possibility. And I don't want to do that. I feel like that's kind of my responsibility, is to actually listen to these regulations and rules that were getting put on us, but also out of respect. Like I have grandparents that I worry about, my parents that I worry about, my friends, my family. I have older friends in their 70s that I worry about. So I just think for me and my, integrity within all of this, like I've literally just been kind of staying at home. And I do know of a trail that nobody is ever at. So I have been getting walks kind of a few blocks away, which has been nice, but that's really about it, unfortunately. But it is what it is.
Yeah, it's a definitely an unprecedented time that we find ourselves in.
It really is. Yeah.
So the next question actually comes from American Alpine Club CEO, the big man himself, Phil Powers.
Ooh, hey,
Uh,
Phil.
and it makes sense that he's asking this question because I happen to know that he has turned the front porch of his home into a gym. And every day
Mhm.
he and his kids have been out there working out, trying to stay sane.
Yeah.
And so his question for you is, what are you doing for training or to stay sane while stuck at home?
Yeah. Another great question. Well, I think you can see behind me right there. I got my hangboard set up. I also made parallel bars today so I can get some core, or at least a different type of core workout, some tricep workout, some shoulder workouts. I do have crossover symmetry bands, which are just like therapy bands to help keep my shoulders and back strong. What else am I doing? I have some kettlebells. So kettlebell swings are always really good, keeping that posterior chain really strong. And starting next week, I'm going to be building a climbing wall in my garage.
Woo!
So I'll be able to climb a little bit there, but yeah, I've just been hiking a lot, or like walking, hiking, whatever. But yeah, I found like exercise is definitely helping me keep my endorphins up. So kind of doing a little bit here, a little bit there. Have some rings coming too. So
Love it. And you know what they say, endorphins keep you happy. Science. You can't argue with that. So
science.
whatever capacity you can exercise, people, you got to do it.
You got to do it. It'll help you sleep better, all of those things.
Another audience question. This one's a bit of a two-parter and appropriate since it's Women's History Month. Chelsea, can you speak to how climbing with women has shaped your own climbing path? And how do you think celebrating women's achievements in climbing, like their first ascents and whatnot, makes the climbing community as a whole better?
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I think you're asking about like first female ascents, FFAs potentially. I've definitely heard both arguments as far as like, well, should we even call it an FFA? It's already been done, but like, why are we making a big, thing about a woman doing it? So I think celebrating FFAs for women, I think is really important, because once the first woman breaks through that barrier, all of a sudden, other women are already starting to do the same thing. Like, it kind of gives us a little bit more confidence, like, oh, well, if she did that, potentially I could do that. And so I think it just kind of feeds as if we're like all connected in some weird like way that we can't really see. For example, Margot Hayes during the first 515A. I don't even know if it was a week later, but it was definitely within the month that another woman then did it, her first 515A. So it's just kind of one of those things where like we're just carving our way, and then we all just kind of like land on that same path, and it's just a really beautiful thing. And then the first part, Heidi, can you remind me what that first part was?
Yeah, it was speaking to how climbing with women, having female partners, has shaped your own climbing path.
Yes, thank you. So actually, for the majority of my career, I actually mostly climbed with men because that's who was around. Like, there weren't very many women, especially when I, started climbing in the Southeast. At the time, that climbing community wasn't very big. And so, yeah, I climbed with the majority of guys, which is great. I have a lot of fun with my guy friends even today when I'm climbing, but there's just something, I wrote an Instagram post about this today. There's something magical about when women come together and climb with one another. Like, it almost makes me able to try even harder because I'm more motivated. Like, all my guards are down and we're just being goofy and we're motivating each other and we're encouraging one another. And so I think, realizing that sometime in my 20s definitely made me, seek out climbing with more women, especially when I moved to Colorado and all of a sudden there were a lot more women that were climbing in this area. And then I think that, after I started focusing on teaching women climbing and seeing like, oh, well, there's a specific space being held for women to come together. Because I think that climbing is actually a really intimidating sport. And so when women, at least from what I've heard with the people that I work with, when they begin climbing, it's like, well, there are these dudes climbing this, and like these girls over here are really good, and like I'm just a little bit, shy, and I don't really know what to do. Like I'm not as good as them. And I've even asked women that I've met that have been rad, like, hey, do you want to come climbing with me? And they're like, yeah, I don't think I'll be as good as you. But I think that's a really special thing about climbing is that it doesn't really matter if you climb 5'9" and this other person climbs 5'14", like you guys can still climb together. And that's a really amazing thing about climbing. You don't have to climb on the same things. So I'm probably rambling right now, but my point is that there's just really good energy. And when I kind of started tapping into that energy, I guess afterwards, that's when I realized that I really wanted to do something more for the women's climbing community, hence the She Sends thing. So it definitely has paved my path towards that. Sorry about the rambling.
No, this is great. I know it's, as you mentioned, it's a funny thing to be presenting to hundreds of people, but not see a single one of them.
Yeah, you're just staring at yourself the whole time talking.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you for indulging us with this little experiment here at the Clubhouse Live. We're getting some more great questions from the audience, from the folks who are tuned in. This one comes from CJ. She says, you mentioned women are climbing more than ever. What do you think are ways groups and organizations are making the landscape more inclusive and welcoming?
Well, I can't say this for certain, but I'm pretty sure Flash Foxy was the first kind of organization to come forward focusing on women. And I think they're like 4 years deep or so, potentially. So I think that with them, more women's events started happening. Like there are women's organizations sprinkled across the US now, which I think is amazing because I don't think just one women's organization would be able to capture everybody. You know, things are gonna, attract other people for different reasons, speak to people for different reasons. So I think it's just really important that we have as many women's organizations as we possibly can. As far as why more women are coming, um, I don't really know. I think like I said earlier, climbing is one of the fastest growing sports in the country. So I think just naturally more women are starting to get into it. There are more climbing gyms that are available. Climbing gyms themselves actually are starting to hold more women specific events. Um, and so I think that women being able to find and plug into these different women's communities is also just really helpful in bringing new women in. So I think that's probably why.
I love it. And that's got to be a lot of the reason behind your organization, She Sends Collective, just one more thread in this fabric that can, bring women and new climbers together.
Yeah.
I personally love seeing that. Yeah, it's great to see more and more orgs like yours pop up. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I think it's important. When I was thinking about it, I was like, yeah, but there's so many women's things going on. Like, it's just going to be oversaturated. And then I was like, no way. Like, we all are offering something different. And I think that there are enough of us that, we can have as many of these women's events as we possibly can right now. So
Yeah, it's kind of like climbing shoes, right? That's why there's so many different brands and models. Because there's no one Cinderella shoe for everybody.
Yeah.
Went a little Disney on you there. So next we have a bit of a fact verifying question. Over the last couple of days, you've done a takeover on the AAC's Instagram page, and in one of the posts, you claim to have a -3 ape index. Is this true, Chelsea?
It is. It's very true. I think I have very short appendages and just a very long torso. I'm definitely like a T-Rex. I've coached kids who are not even 5 feet tall yet, who have longer wingspans than I do, which is weird.
So there you have it, folks. You cannot blame not sending your problem or your route on your arms or your slippery rubber. You just you just gotta send. No
Yeah, you just
excuses.
gotta own it. Make it work for you.
So you've been climbing for years. You've climbed in a lot of different places.
Yeah.
Um, this is a bit of a hard question. I realize that, but which climb has been the most meaningful for you? And by that, we don't mean the hardest or the most badass, but which one has had the biggest impact on your journey as a climber?
Ooh,
Told you it was a hard one.
that's a tough one. All right. What climb? Any climb, regardless of discipline?
Any climb. It's just the one that spoke the most to your soul or changed your trajectory the most.
Yeah. Okay, so my dad and I went climbing in El Potrero Chico in Mexico. I was in high school, and that was the only time I've been. I really want to go back. And he and I climbed this tower type thing. And it was so scary because I was leading. I was his rope gun for sure. And like the second pitch or whatever, you definitely kind of like traversed out so that it was nothing but air underneath you. And then you like climbed up. And I definitely backed down like, 4 or 5 times. And finally was like, I'm going. Dad, we're going, we're doing it. And I don't even know the name of it. I'm terrible with names. I don't even know what grade it was, but just like that sense of adventure. And I just remember like the wind blowing in my hair and like, oh, the sun was shining. Like, I would say that is probably the best route that I've ever done, just because it really, really kind of planted that seed for love of adventure. And while I don't really do a whole lot of adventure climbing these days, I don't think that that will last. Like, I'm definitely wanting to do more adventure climbing. And I think it's that route that has definitely inspired that. So, whatever that route is.
That one route, that one place,
One route.
that one grade. Hey, grades don't matter.
Grades don't matter. I always say that grades don't matter. If it looks inspiring to you, just go do it. Even, yeah, I just think it's so important. Set those grades aside.
Love it. So let's just do one, maybe two more questions here. How about this one from audience member Jason S? He asks, any future climbing projects or goals that are keeping you motivated right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. I definitely had goals for 2020. I think for me right now, I don't really know when this is going to end, and neither does anyone else. Like I was supposed to go on a trip with Molly Mitchell in May to the New River Gorge, and we were going to work on a route together. Pretty sure that's not happening, which is fine. So specific goals, I don't know. One thing that I do want to do though is I haven't placed any trad gear since my friend Savannah passed away. It was in a trad climbing accident. And I'm feeling like I definitely want to kind of get back into it, literally start from ground zero, place some gear on the ground and just test it and just play around and start building my confidence again. So that's definitely one thing. There are specific routes, like there's this route at the Red River Gorge called Thanatopsis that I went to 5 or 6 years ago, prior to the only 2 surgeries I've had in my life. And I didn't finish it, and I really want to go back and finish it. So at some point, hopefully when November comes around, we'll be back to normal and we can go do that. Other than that, I think the rest of them are just like, okay, well, if it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I don't know. But I guess like what's motivating me to stay fit during this time is um, I had shoulder surgery 2 years ago, which it took me a long time to recover from. And coming back to climbing after that just felt so hard. I could barely hang on to anything. So I really don't want to feel that way again. So I've been hanging on the hangboard and like trying to stay fit that way just because I feel like I just went through that and I don't need to do that again right now.
No, getting injured is the worst.
Yeah. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Chelsea, so much for joining us for the first ever Clubhouse Live. For those of you who missed the very beginning or got lost in the technology kerfuffle that we had there at the beginning, this is Chelsea Rude. She's a professional climber, coach, and founder of the She Sends Collective, and just all around rad human. So Chelsea, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, and to all of the AAC family and members out there who tuned in, thanks for joining us for the first ever Clubhouse Live. This is going to be a weekly event, a way for us to build some virtual community during these times and just stay connected and inspired. So tune in next week to hear from Madeline Sorkin, who will be interviewing Brett Harrington, and look for more from the Clubhouse Live weekly. Thank you so much, Chelsea, and everybody for tuning in.
Thank you. Heidi.